Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Chasing the Dream. I'm so excited to have with us today John Tarnoff. Let me give you a little bit of background into John, and then we're going to just jump right in, John. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Keep going.
Rock and roll. So John's an executive and a career coach, speaker, author, and he helps mid-career professionals land better jobs, build more meaningful and sustainable careers. And something he said, I just can't have my eyes gravitate away from. He said he was fired 39% of his 35-year career, which spanned in film production. He was a studio executive and a technology entrepreneur. He learned how to turn setbacks throughout his career into success in a volatile business. So he reinvented his own career at 50, earning a master's degree in counseling psychology, specifically to share his own career life lessons and experiences with others who are going through similar challenges. So since leaving the entertainment industry in 2010, he's built a global career coaching practice serving individuals one-on-one and in group-based situations. He's also led career workshops to MBA alumni at fine academic institutions, including UCLA and Cornell. His proprietary 3 elements career builder framework empowers clients to define their niche value, build a referral community, and use their thought leadership to enhance their professional brand and attract the right career opportunities. So learning John's specific framework empowers his clients to never, ever have to search for a job again. Amen. So John's a TED speaker, author of the best-selling Boomer Reinvention, How to Create Your Dream Career, over 50. His 4 LinkedIn learning courses have reached over 200,000 learners and been translated into 9 languages. So with all of that said and done, John, are you ready to go chasing the dream?
I'm going to go back to bed.
Work done. One of the things that you had mentioned when we were talking previously was how 2010 was such a seminal moment in terms of your career and your kind of journey. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what was happening to you around that time frame and what you did in response to it.
Right. Well, I kind of feel like in retrospect, my life or my career seems to do a switch every 10 years or so. I kind of look back and the end of the tech bubble, 2001, was the washout of my startup. And I kind of looked around. I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I didn't want to go back to those jobs that I had done in the movie business back in the 80s and 90s. And I didn't quite know what was in front of me. So that's when I went back to school to earn the psychology degree, more because I wanted to learn more about myself and kind of test myself and do something different. And out of that, ironically, I got drawn back into the entertainment business at DreamWorks Animation, where I was for the rest of the 2000s, but doing a very different role. I was in a more of a people role as opposed to a content role, which had been my prior work. And that people role kind of got me all fired up about education and training. And when DreamWorks kind of changed direction coming out of the recession, 2008, 2009, 2010, I thought, okay, it's time for me to go and do something that I've never done before, which is to go out and be on my own and consult and see where that leads. I didn't realize at that time it was going to go into career specifically, but I knew I wanted to do something that was about working with people and training and education. And the TEDx talk that you referenced in the intro was the turning point for me, because I picked a topic. The topic of the day was transformation. So everyone's talking about some aspect of transformation. And I kind of took a left turn. Instead of talking about my prior industry and the career and the transformations in technology and streaming services and Netflix and all that stuff, I thought people are having a really hard time recovering from this recession, particularly people who are older, who are my age, who are over 50. And what are we going to do if we can't afford to retire and there are no jobs because there's ageism and everyone thinks we're done? And there are all these myths about older people and older workers that are outdated and completely insane. So that's what got me into this. And then I did this talk and people were coming up to me after the talk and saying, hey, do you coach? And I thought, oh, maybe this is something to start exploring. So that's when I started getting into it, 2012 or so. And, it's been now 12 years. Hard to believe. And it's gone through lots of changes. And the world is kind of catching up to this idea that, oh my God, older workers are valuable. It's slow. There's still a tremendous amount of bias out there in the marketplace. And I wouldn't be in business if there wasn't, because people are coming to me going, I'm being told I'm overqualified for this job. What is that about? Right. Or I get on the Zoom call for the interview and all of a sudden they tell me the job isn't posted any longer. What's that about? So, I mean, there's really crazy stuff going on.
So yeah, and you talk about the need to reinvent yourself seemingly on a decade by decade basis, and so here we are. You said 12, 13 years into the reinvention, and something just recently happened a few years ago, a global pandemic, and the world shuts down, and it shifts the whole the notion of work. And so these people who were already previously dealing with ageism and age-based bias in terms of their mid-career search, you have this other overlay, right? This other additional set of challenges. What could you say definitively based on your own experience going back a few decades and all the way up to now are some of the strategies of success you have found for yourself and your practice where people who are at that age can say, I'm not done, not by a long shot. I understand that people out there are biased against me. What do you advise and counsel?
Right.
To
Well,
people who are dealing with that?
the first thing I will say to anybody is stop relying on the traditional job search process, because hiring is broken and it just keeps breaking. It seems to be more and more as days go by, because the volume of job applications that comes in to a typical open position dwarfs the ability of any recruiter or HR team to successfully process those applications. The cliche is that the average recruiter spends 6 to 7 seconds skimming a resume. So why are you going to all that trouble to make your resume stand out when no one's going to read it? They're going to put it through the applicant tracking system and they're going to scan for keywords and all that stuff. So the interesting thing about my career is that in entertainment, because it's such a networking driven, relationship driven business, in those 35 years, I never used a resume or submitted a resume to get a job.
Yeah, you had mentioned that, and I just was hoping you could kind of share some perspective on how those relationships are part of your strategy with advising other people to build out their network of relationships.
So what I realized was that the rest of the world is now becoming more and more like the entertainment business always has been, which is that it relies on relationships, it relies on referrals more than anything else. And there is this thing called the hidden job market, which is where fully 80% of hiring takes place. And this is the referral market, whether it's internal referrals or external referrals. Most jobs are filled because someone calls up the hiring manager or the recruiter and says, hey, you need to see this person. And that is the kind of funnel that we want. And I'm sure in your career, and I know in my career, I've done a fair amount of hiring. And if you have a choice between taking the advice of a trusted colleague who's referring someone to you versus trying to vet some unknown person who's coming in over the transom through HR, what are you going to do? You're going to trust that colleague who's referring that candidate to you because it's much more trustworthy.
So I want to jump in here because this is something you said previously, and I so greatly appreciate it. But it feels like I need to ask a question. So, and you're right, I did experience this as a 50-year-old job seeker, but also earlier on, I was a career coach. And so my question to you is, if 80% of the jobs fall into this hidden market, and you're telling a mid-career transition or somebody in their 50s, they go, you know, John, what you're saying makes sense to me. I've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. But the people I'm forced to interact with now are either bots, they're they're artificial intelligence, or they're recruiters who don't want to get to know my 30 years of experience, or even worse, there's some 20-plus-year-old on
Mhm.
the other side of the Zoom screen. How do you
Yeah.
advise and counsel the people who are going through that with
Right.
your framework based
Right.
on you having dealt with this for decades?
Sure. So this distills down to what this framework is about. And it really is very simple. And I think it's very logical. The end goal is to build trust and represent your expertise and build relationships so that the opportunities will flow through to you because of what's out there, right? Of how your brand is established. And your brand is not, how good you look in a photograph or, or some kind of glib representation of who you are. It's a much deeper proposition. So reverse engineering from that end goal of being referred to jobs, of having opportunities come your way, of having people call you up and say, hey, I know who you are, and I've been following you. I'm interested in talking to you about this position. Or I'd like to meet you because you say interesting things, and we need to, would you come in and talk to our people? It's not a job, but it's an opportunity to network and whatever. So the number one first step that you want to take is the first of my three elements, which is define your superpower. One of the pitfalls I think that many people at this stage in their careers fall into is this idea that, oh, I'm a generalist. I can do anything. I've done this. I mean, I look at all these jobs I've had. In this job, I was supervising this. In this job, I was managing that. What do you need? Wrong. No employer wants a generalist. I'm sorry, they appreciate generalists. Once you're in the job, they're going to love the fact that you're a generalist because you can be much more strategic, but they want a specialist. So to get in the door, you need to define that set of skills, deliverables, outcomes, results that you deliver. And that's your superpower. And then you need to articulate that superpower in a way that really draws on what you think the market is going to want. And you need to then build a community around that value proposition.
Is this all part of the first element, or are we talking
This is the
sequentially?
second element. Now we're talking the second element.
So the second
Building
element
is,
begins with the articulation of your superpower?
yes. The articulation is kind of that bridge
Okay.
between what it is that you offer and who it is that you're targeting. And then the second element is the building of the community around that. You want to, my line is that a network will stand by and watch you fail. A community will pitch in and help you succeed. Because a community is a group of people with shared interests, shared values, who get you, who really want to support you because it's mutually beneficial. So you want to look around in the network of, 500 plus people on LinkedIn who are in your network and figure out who are the top 50 or 100 people in that network who can be the foundation of this community.
So I do want to ask a question because this is so relevant. The notion of I've got X thousand connections in LinkedIn. I'm hearing you say that's meaningless. What not meaningless, but rather the tribe of maybe 20 people who are part of your little community, where not only do they want to make sure John and Ethan succeed, but they're aligned with our success. Am I correct
Yeah,
in understanding that?
yeah. But
Okay.
those 500, 1,000, 5,000 people are not irrelevant. It's
Right.
a funnel.
I tried to walk that one
Right?
back.
You have to think of it as a funnel. So I like to divide the grouping, the network, into 3 tiers: silver, gold, and platinum. Your silver tier is kind of everyone in the network that you at least have a business card. Remember business cards that you have a connection
Business
to,
cards.
who is on your account, right? It's potential. They're kind of a big bench of potential contacts for you. Your gold group is the group of people with whom you have had some contact in the past. Maybe they're former colleagues, friends of friends, whatever. They're in your industry, where there can be something actionable going on there. You can call them up for information, right? They're relevant to your particular career quest. And then your platinum group, this is your core community. This is really where we get into that idea of community, where these are the people who are really aligned with who you are, where you're going, what you want, what you've done. And those are the ones who are really going to help pitch in to support you. So your process, let me just say this, your process in networking, certainly on LinkedIn, but more broadly as well, is to filter those people through these tiers.
Right.
Right. And if you see a gold contact, for example, that is, maybe it's someone that you worked with 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you haven't kept up with them, but all of a sudden you look at their profile and you see where they've been since then, right? And you think, oh my God, this person could really be a great person to get back in touch with and bring into the platinum group. That's part of the mindset that you want to apply to building the community.
It sounds a lot to me, and it resonates on a few levels, but it sounds to me like the prioritization is you're walking them through. If you're pouring all of your connections into the funnel, the silver are the most immediate, they're the largest. And then as you drill down in relationship connectivity or engagement, then the gold, as you said, are the next level in or down. And then the platinum, you said, if I caught that, is they're the ones who are most in alignment with this notion you have of community.
Right. That's the core of your community is your platinum. And then even drilling further than that, I advise people to, out of that platinum group, pick your personal board of directors. Who are the 3, 4, 5 people who are really tight with you? The people that you can call up in the middle of the night with a panic attack and go, my God, I'm never going to work again. And they're going to walk you off the ledge. And those are the people who are going to be the strategists. You know, they're going to really be the mentors for you, to really get you straight on what your strategy is. And they may advise you on revising your LinkedIn profile so that your superpower is that much greater. They may have a set of connections that they want to introduce you to. They may advise you on negotiating your contract. I mean, all sorts of things, but you want to try to, just like any business has a board of directors, you want to have that consistent go-to cadre group of people that you can trust.
You talk about the 3 elements that are the framework of your methodology or experience. In total. The first is this notion of identify, define your superpower or powers. The second is the critical need to build a community around the superpower. Now, I'm assuming since you said 3 and we've covered 2, that there's one more.
There is one. Yes, there's more. Wait, there's more.
But wait, if you act right now.
That's right. So the third one is building a brand through thought leadership. And the problem with networking that everyone always says is, okay, so now I got the network. Now what do I do? I can't keep calling these people every week and saying, hey, have you heard of anything? It's like totally annoying, right? So how do you do that? And this to me is the answer. Build this brand through thought leadership. Stand up for what you stand for and create a thought leadership practice which involves online, whether you're, depending on what your business is and what you're trying to do, it is probably going to be on LinkedIn. But if you have a consumer-facing business, it could be on Instagram, where you are putting out content that is leadership-oriented towards your business. you're talking about the issues and themes and the challenges that people who do what you do are facing, what the industry you're working in may be facing. And you're creating conversations around this, whether you're curating articles, whether you're posting your own original ideas, maybe you're on a blog, maybe you're doing what you and I are doing right now, which is being on a podcast. So I'm exercising my thought leadership right here with you to share with other people who might say, huh, that's an interesting framework. I should talk to this guy, right?
Yeah.
That same methodology applies to everyone who is an experienced professional. And this is why it's really important to distinguish why this works for 45, 50, 55, 60 versus 25, 30, 35, because at this point in your career, you've got authority, you've got experience, you know what's what, you know what to say. People will believe you, and they will trust you.
That. I get that. And here's my kind of curiosity is in your subject matter leadership and your kind of decade plus of experience working with thousands of individuals who fall into this specific stage of their career. Do you ever get pushback from them, which sounds a little bit like, you know what, John, I've done all these things. I've been working for 30 plus years. I don't feel comfortable having to position myself as a brand. Shouldn't my work the totality of my career, John, should speak for itself? Is that ever in the mindset of somebody who you're navigating?
Of course.
How do you reconcile that?
It's on everyone's mind. So I'll tell you a funny story. So when I was at DreamWorks, I worked pretty closely with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the founder, on a lot of these recruiting initiatives we did, and we were out to schools a lot. We were recruiting from schools. This was a big signature program that I started there. So I would take Jeffrey out to schools, and he was a great speaker because he's very direct and he's very funny and a little bit kind of jarring. So a kid gets up at some school and says this very question, says, shouldn't my work speak for me? And Jeffrey said, well, in the real world, I said, he said, I'm gonna screw this up. He said, in an ideal world, your work should speak for you, but in the real world, you have to speak for your work. And I thought that was very concisely put. And this is my pushback to people who go, oh, I don't feel comfortable about doing this. You should feel comfortable about, let me put it this way. What's uncomfortable about expressing yourself genuinely, authentically, about what you love to do? If you can capture in your superpower that set of work that you do, it's like this idea of the ikigai, this Japanese idea of life's purpose.
Yes.
And it's been translated into this Venn diagram, lots of controversy about whether it's really ikigai or whether it's, some bastardization of it. But the 4 questions are really important, which is, what do you love to do? What do you do best or do well? What does your world need? That's my spin on it. It says, usually it's what does the world need? Please, we're not going to solve the world's problems. You just need to solve what your world needs, your business, your industry. And then what can you get paid for? Or as I'm evolving this model, who's your target audience? And if you can answer those 4 questions, you can begin to find a way to express yourself authentically so that it doesn't become this awkward issue about, oh God, how do I establish this brand? Because the brand is not something different from you. It is you.
Right. That's actually really fascinating, I guess, exercise is to ask somebody who's working with you, what are you really passionate about? And then the next kind of step that I hear you saying is, now, what's your superhero power?
Right.
And that if you're passionate about something, but you have no superhero power, you're just a wannabe pretend superhero. But if you have a superpower, but there's no passion behind it, it sounds like a God-given gift that's going, there's no passion in the belly, but where they overlap to me sounds like an ideal next career.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea of passion.
How would you reframe that if you were literally sitting across from somebody talking about That
Well,
first to second step, the bridge.
well, let me unpack that,
Yeah.
because, we're kind of raised on Joseph Campbell and this false idea to me that follow your passion and the dream and the money will follow. Follow your dreams and the money will follow. There's a guy named Ben Horowitz who's a venture capitalist who's a Columbia grad, and he did this really great commencement address at Columbia University a number of years ago, and this is of course the charge to graduates, and he says if every if following your dreams and the money will follow were a real thing, then every contestant on American Idol would be a zillionaire. And he
That's
said,
one way to frame it.
right, instead of following your passion, he said, follow your usefulness. And your usefulness can become your passion. Because if you are, and this gets back down to people, it gets down to network and community, if you can make a difference in someone else's life, if you can understand how what you do makes a difference in someone else's life, that's something that I think any of us can get behind and become very wedded to, if not passionate about. So back to this idea of what do you love to do and what do you do well? In that marriage there of those two ideas is the basis, I think, for how you want to go forward. And they always say when you're looking for a job, make a list, right? Make lists of, what you do and all that stuff.
Right, right.
And I think that's a valuable exercise. But I think this goes a little bit further, because what I think is most important about this process is that it become an inside out process. Again, to the idea, this is maybe getting kind of confusing at this point, but if the hiring system is broken and the hiring system is telling you, okay, what's your job title? What's your background? Well, here are the jobs that are being filled. You should apply to these jobs because those jobs are relevant to your background.
Right.
I say, forget about that. Don't apply to jobs that you can do. Apply to jobs, or actually attract the jobs that you were born to do. Because particularly at this stage in your career, when you have more than simply skills to offer, you're not going to get those jobs that you just kind of can do because you're too experienced. You are, in fact, too overqualified for those jobs. This is a line that everyone gets. Oh, you're overqualified for this job. Why are you applying for this job? And while I think there are reasons to apply to a job where you're overqualified, there are ways of saying, well, no, this is really what I want to do. The question is relevant. The question overall is a challenge to say, what do you really want to do? What are you really good at? How can you really move the needle? You're older, you're experienced, you know what's what. You're supposed to have it all figured out. Tell me something I don't know, right? And that's what my system is attempting to get people to do, is to really tap into that superpower and lead from there. Sure, keep applying to jobs while you're in this process. Absolutely, you can double track this. And
Right.
you need to get back to work. I understand that. But think long term. Long term, you want to do something that you are best at, that you love to do, that can move the needle, that can make an impact. Because another thing that happens when you're over 50 is meaning and purpose become much more important. You want to leave a legacy. What's this all about? What's my job been about all this time, right? You want to feel like your mojo is going in the right direction.
Right. I mean, this is powerful stuff. This is really powerful. This is kind of marrying the intersection of what are you really passionate about and what are you really, really, really good at. And then because of that, who can you be of service to and be useful to? And then the ultimate manifestation, that step 4, I've heard you say over and over today is, okay, now that you've identified that, who can you do that for?
Right.
And that's a really powerful, logical thought progression.
And that's where I just want to emphasize this. This is why the network and the community and the thought leadership are so important, because the answer to the question of who can I do that for is out there in the conversations that you have with people. The more conversations you have with people where they go, oh, now I understand who you are and what you do. Okay, I've got some ideas for you. Right? This is how it starts to happen. And countless experiences talking to people, clients, non-clients, about random conversations that they have in strange situations that lead to the best jobs of their lives, right? Because of this personal connection and these really targeted conversations about what they love to do, what they do well, right? What does the world need? What are we doing here? What are the problems that our industry is facing? What's going to happen in 10 years if we don't do this? AI, right? How is AI going to impact all of us?
Oh, yes.
I mean, we need to be thinking about this. We need to step up. We need to be talking about this stuff, how it affects us, how it can affect the people we work with. Thought leadership matters.
And who else would be primed to have these kind of societal impact conversations than those with decades of experience?
Hello.
Ready, solving problems. Hey, listen, John, I mean, you and I could go on for hours. We already have various discussions, but I wanted to ask you, for those
Yes.
people who have heard what you said as a thought leader and said, I really need to connect with him and Reinvention Group, how do people get in touch with you?
Yep. Find me on LinkedIn. Just search me. I think I'm the only John Tarnoff I've found on LinkedIn. So it's really easy to find me on LinkedIn.
You are.
You can also find me on my website, which is johntarnoff.com, JOHN.
And there'll be a link to that. There'll be a link to that.
Right. And then if you want to kind of get into this right away, on the website, there is a little form, a little Ikigai style form to answer these 4 questions. And I would really recommend that if you're starting this process and you're thinking, well, how do I get going with this? Answer the 4 questions. So it's johntarnoff.com/4 questions, the number 4 questions, no spaces. And that little sheet will come up and you can take that little exercise.
Listen, John, I just want to say thank you again for sharing your decades worth of your personal experience and how you're applying that to guiding and counseling individuals who are in similar circumstances. I wish I had come across you a few years back when I was on my last job search, where I experienced everything that you talked about. So again, thank you for coming on the program, and we'll make all of your link information available in the description below. So
it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.